Greetings, everybody. My name is Jeewa Perera. I'm the co-founder and the CEO for Spot Technologies. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, a couple of different housekeeping items. If you want to ask a question, make sure that you message the Spot Technologies host. If not, you will not be. I don't know how Roger was able to talk to us, but you will not be able to talk to us directly. We are going to mute everybody automatically during the webinar. And if you have a question, the only way to ask the question is, like I said, is sending us a message. We will have 15 to 20 minutes of time after the presentation for you guys to ask any questions. I don't know how we are going to do that, guys, the host. Are we going to enable the mic, or is it still going to be maybe messages? We'll figure that one out at the end. We have my guest today is Fred Mindermann. He has been a CEO and also CEO and a good friend of mine for the last decade, right, Fred? For a long time.
Oh yeah.
We both are very passionate about AI and blockchain technology, especially how we can use AI and blockchain technology to improve human capital. Fred, we are very happy to have you today. Hopefully, this is going to be an engaging presentation.
Well, thank you, Gene.
With that, take away.
Okay, I'll start my timer because we have a lot to cover today. And welcome, everyone. Hello. Again, my name is Fred Mindermann. I'm glad to be on this webinar with all of you. It's being recorded, and we're only going to scratch the surface on a lot of content. So, Roger Richardson, who you'll see a case study from Vanderbilt later, we met writing a book in the 90s on comprehensive respiratory home care. He's traveled with me internationally as my COO, then him becoming a CEO of a company. So I'm going to share some of the things that we developed internationally when we did work in North America, Europe, and South America with a very diverse workforce. And also, whether your company is small or large, all the content you're going to see today will be applicable. And also, if you're looking to recruit or you're looking to find a job, we'll cover that as well. So let's go to the next slide, G. I think by the grace of a higher power, I woke up this morning, and every morning I wake up and I'm just thankful I'm able to wake up, and then I try to learn something, check the international news, the weather, all those things. And today an article came up, so at the last minute I scrambled and asked G to add a couple slides right away as kind of a ho-hum crasher, because it truly does impact our lives today. No company, as you can see in the third paragraph, every company is a technology company. Whether you're in the food industry, whether you're manufacturing something, whether you're on a cattle farm, or you're plowing fields with a GPS system or satellites, we're all impacted with technology. And data is the asset. My good friend Friedel Vogeli, who's probably on this in Switzerland, that I have a patent on that we developed many years ago on a web-based platform. His brother worked in a Swiss bank, and he said someday data will be as valuable as oil. And today we see that data is the asset. So this whole aspect of protecting data, cybersecurity, has just boomed. And I work in cybersecurity currently with a company called Certainty out of Nashville. It's developed a really cool technology to empower data to be self-protected, self-governed. And that technology is just one of the many ways that we're trying to secure data throughout the world. And so you can see we have a shortage of people to be able to be experts and have the skill sets within this area. And what's really cool about what we're seeing is that most people can learn on the job or continue their skill sets. Very few colleges have education that is current and changing by the minute. So you can get a good base online. I'm just currently doing an online course in cybersecurity, and it's just changing constantly. So if you don't have a degree and you want to get in cybersecurity, or you want to recruit people that have a lot of great values that we'll talk about on the next slide, then it's wide open. It's a great frontier and a great opportunity. Let's go to the next slide. So in this article that came up in Tech Republic today, and if you're not into their e-newsletter, I'd suggest that you subscribe to it. It's really great. Best practices for recruiting cybersecurity talent. And this could be not only for cybersecurity, but for other areas. Look beyond the usual places of talent. And there's a lot of content behind each of these bullet points. And this is being recorded, and we can later provide everyone on the email with the sources and even the PowerPoint. That's fine. Don't require candidates to have designated skills. Look for relevant skills beyond formal education and be willing to train candidates after they're hired. And use certifications. Certifications in the modern world are far greater than an MBA that you earn online. Certifications are real-time skill sets that if they achieve that level and they pass those tests, they have the skill sets and the knowledge to do that job today. And craft the job descriptions very carefully. We'll show you a couple examples here about job descriptions. And sell the company and the job when you're recruiting. Make the company stand out, that it's a good corporate citizen, it's a great place to work. I worked for a software engineering group out in San Diego a few years ago. We had 100 high-end software engineers, and we had food in the kitchen. We had events all the time. We had, beer and wine night once a month, and we became a family. And it's difficult when you're working virtually or you're doing software development or other things. And then plan for a succession plan immediately for that new hire. And that way you'll have a backup. Let's go on to the next slide. So today in this session, we're going to go over 7 things, and we'll do it within the next 40 minutes, and then we'll do a Q&A. First of all, we're going to go into what is the definition of the value of human capital, and what drives a healthy company organism. How do you fill and find the right spot, finding a right job, filling the right open opportunity. And then the cost of hiring the wrong person for the job. Biases in hiring processes and how that's marginalizing some candidates and what you can do for it with the need for unbiased platforms. And then we're going to look at a case study that Roger Richardson provided to me from Vanderbilt Health in Nashville, and then we'll do Q&A. Let's go on to the next slide. Human capital is an intangible asset. It's probably one of the best assets we have in the human race. Every human has value, and every human has skills that result in value. So when a company, and I've had hundreds and thousands of employees, every employee had value or has value. And how you develop that increases the value. And so, we have Bitcoin, we have now different types of cryptocurrency for paintings and for what you're doing. It's valuing something that's non-traditional in a different way. And that's the world we're living in now. So the more that you as an individual or you as a company can increase the value of human capital by providing great onboarding, great environment, great training, and great support in a positive environment, you'll get your return on your investment. And the ROI is what we're talking about. Next slide. I really like this picture, and there's a lot of pictures I could have implemented here, but I grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s and watched guys, young guys working out of their garages, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates and so forth. It's now going forward. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I learned everything, went to college, did jobs, worked internationally as a person and a minority in a big company. And into my 30s, I got my first CEO job. Was I ready for it? Absolutely not. But I learned through training and on the job and so forth, and I was empowered by leaders or mentors that helped me get there. And in the 40s, I made my mistakes and did my fun things and so forth. And then I turned 50, and then the second half of the game, life begins, because you've been through all those trials and tribulations, and now it's a great time to go ahead. And what I believe in as a CEO is every employee should be empowered. If they want to learn, or they want to learn a new skill, or they want to move up, you should really promote that. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So I came up with an equation. And to me, the number one thing when we look at for any employee is integrity. If you have integrity, you know that they will show up on time, they'll be a good employee, they'll treat others fairly, they'll do their job really well, and that plus the quality of their work and the quality of the service or product that they produce will equal success. Let's go ahead on the next slide. Integrity starts at the top. If you don't have a good board and a good leadership in the company, I'm sorry, but the whole company will not succeed. Investors or owners of a company have to lead by example, and they have to have integrity. And they have to have a board and executive suite that manages professionally and shows that every employee, they are leaders and they know what they're doing, and they're not going to put the company in jeopardy. That plus quality of the company's organization and the reputation as a good corporate citizen, and the quality of the company's operations, meaning do they have the policy procedures? Do they have good onboarding? Do they have all the things that make it run and hum? And if not, are they willing to evaluate it and look at that? And then the quality of the product or services that come out of it. It is really important to have all these things that give you that factor of success. Next slide. What drives a healthy company organization? Clear goals, executive management who understand the value of human capital as an asset. And there are calculations that the CFOs and the executive team can do from year to year. If I'm running a company and I invest $1 million into human capital, training, onboarding, social things, charity work, all those things, and I see a delta change in my profits the next year, I can track the return on my investment. And there are formulas out there that you can go into or we can provide. A company culture that embraces the value of human capital at all levels. I was taught at a very early age, after my father died when I was 8, by a lot of good mentors, that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do the best at what you're doing. So if you're a ditch digger or you're a maintenance person or you're a CEO, every day get up and do the best you can, and that will give you the best return on your own asset. Manage by objectives. And we're going to look at a form, and I've used this in every company I've run, where if the company has a goal, it needs resources to be able to fulfill those goals. Job descriptions and resource identifications need to be done. And based on that, there has to be some goals and objectives for that employee to agree on that they will sign, that in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, the performance reviews will reflect what you agreed on. The job description and the MBOs. And then you've got to invest in training and onboarding. That is so critical. And I put in parentheses an easy one-source portal. I don't know how many companies I've worked for where I've got to go to ADP to check something. I've got to go to another portal to check something else. I've got emails. I've got all this. And what Roger and I did when he was COO and I was CEO of LifeWatch, which we had 350 employees servicing 19,000 doctors and 350,000 patients nationwide, is we created a portal that everything was in one, and I'll show you an example of that that might help you. And then use the best recruiting resources and the best interviewing processes. One thing that I always made sure as CEO, that regardless of who was being employed by the company, at the very end, before we gave them an offer, I asked to meet with them for 10, 15 minutes, just to make sure they understood my commitment to the company, our mission, and are they willing and ready to join us and contribute. And that was super, super effective. And every day when I came into the facility at O'Hare, where we had 24/7 cardiac monitoring, I would make sure I go around in every area and say, good morning, how are things? And the best compliment I ever got as a CEO from a lady was, you're firm but fair. We know where you stand. It's very clear, and you're fair. You'll be fair with us. Next slide. This is an example, just some text from a job description, things you've got to have. And this is changing dynamically. The first couple slides I talked about today, there are far more things than what you see in here. And scroll to the next slide, because there's attributes that you should make sure that you include in job descriptions. If you can go to the next slide, G, that are important, that are technical skills and leadership skills, but also social skills and so forth. I mean, are you willing to get involved with company charity events and so forth? Do you have other interests? And we're not talking religious, political, those things. That's keep those out of a company. Let people do that on their own. But positive attributes that contribute to the value of the human capital. Next slide. And here are some more attributes and qualifications. A team player. I can't tell you how critical it is to build a strong morale and spirit in a team when everyone gets involved from the top to the bottom. No one appreciates a CEO who sits in the ivory tower or locks himself up in a kitchen while there's a pandemic or whatever. You've got to be out there talking with the people all the time, checking in, how are you doing, and be a team. Next slide, please. MBOs. These are critical. This is what a person signs when they accept the offer. If they don't agree to the MBOs, don't hire them. But these are things where, and this is just a few texts I grabbed out of the forms that we've developed in the past, but it is basically your contract saying, I agree to fulfill this objective, and I will be judged and reviewed in my performance review on these things that we agreed upon. Next slide. So it also includes objectives, performance measurements, weighting factors. And basically at the end of this, basically you sign off on it. And let's go now to the performance review. Because after 30 days, when you have a new employee, you've onboarded them, you've invested a lot of money. And in Roger's case study, you'll see, I mean, a lot of money. It's, it could be 50, 60% of their salary goes into onboarding and bringing an employee up to speed. So when you lose an employee, it's pretty significant. Next slide, G. So the performance review. Look at the bottom right corner. Look at the bottom line. At the end of the day, do you want to keep this? Did you make a bad investment? Or are you willing to continue to invest in that particular employee? And this is just a section of a performance review. And you can fill in the items that tie into the MBOs. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Finding the right spot. Everyone has looked for a job. Everyone may be looking for a job right now. And it's always important to understand where the candidate's coming from. And it's always good to be able to relate to what their priorities are. And to the right might be certain things that weigh more as a priority than others. Next slide, please. Find the best company that fulfills your whole goal and your wish list. More and more younger employees, the younger workforce, 20s, 30s, it's more than just, when I was that age, you go to work for Siemens or GE or IBM and you look at the people who are retiring and you're like, I'm going to work 40 years, I'm going to retire, then I'm going to move to Florida and I'm going to get a shuffleboard and then I'm going to die. Things have changed. The priorities of the new workforce and some of us older workforce people have changed to look at other things in companies that are important. Are they a good corporate citizen? Do they engage in charitable work together, building teamwork? Are they concerned about planet things and climate? Again, keep religion, keep politics, keep anything that can build up anxiety and negativity out of a company environment. Focus on the positive. Next slide. So I'm going to show you a couple slides of what Roger and our team and even Jeewa developed some things, and my friend Frederick, we created a platform for health and wellness. We all kind of brainstormed, and we had these 350 employees. So a couple of the things that I would like to implement in companies, or I'd like to have when I work for a company, is a company that's focused on me as an individual, on my health, mental health, physical health, intellectual health, and the mission. And my mission, it matches theirs. So we created a portal for every. And this portal gave them their personalized environment where they not only could see their benefits, they could attend a university that we developed online, LifeWatch University, My Health for Health and tracking it, travel, tied to a travel agency, and all kinds of My Finances. We had financial planners and so forth about their 401k and so forth. Next slide. It's almost like a USA Today where I log in, I get in here, and the first thing I see is my weather, I can see my news, I can see my benefits, I can go to the shop and buy things if I want to. It really was well accepted, and everyone really felt good because everything was in one site. And as an employer looking to recruit, our employees were extremely happy with having this. And Roger, who you'll see in the picture later on at Vanderbilt, he coordinated a move to a 50,000 plus square foot facility at O'Hare Airport where we had 24/7 call centers, and we put in a gym, lockers, place to eat, and we helped pay for their transportation and parking, and everyone felt really positive about the work environment. And this, they could be anywhere, anytime, and have one source to check everything about what they're doing. Okay, next slide. And they could look into the company. We were a public company. Our parent was out of Switzerland, and we were preparing for a NASDAQ IPO. And so we had a lot going on. It was a company that I came into that the chairman wanted me to help turn it around. The morale was very poor. The financials weren't that great. The receivables were way out of line. Half the sales force of 75 people were ready to quit. And so it was not a fun place to come into. And it took a lot of energy and time to do that. But taking an executive meeting that usually was 3 hours long, maybe on a Wednesday, we condensed it into 1 hour every Monday morning at 9 a.m. with metrics that we developed and a monitor that if you're either in the red in your department or you're in the green. And it was like grad school. We didn't sit there and rehash everything the executive managers did every week. we only focused on the red zones, and it was like grad school where everyone focused to help each other if their area had a red area that needed assistance or correction. And that's another tool that I'd be happy to share. Next slide. This is what we developed was a employee and consumer health program, incorporating all aspects of health maintenance. And this really came out of work that Friedel and Vogeli in Switzerland and I developed starting in 1996 when we met when I was CEO in Austin. He was an engineer, an investor, unbelievably talented guy, and he developed digital stethoscopes, and I just went crazy with him. And so we heard about the internet, we heard about all the mobile apps, Bluetooth, and we created a platform that would be one source for your health. And so we worked with G and others, and we created a health program that tied in with, and this is back in 2006, 2007, with Bluetooth monitors, and to be able to go in and work with your health. Now it's everywhere. Telehealth's everywhere. Next slide, please. A lot of this now, third parties, especially in the United States, have to facilitate because of HIPAA regulations, but we did have third parties help us with that. It's important that you create your own university. I don't care how big or small you are. Make some shirts, get a logo. You're going to teach, and there's a lot of free online courses. Google just announced that they're offering really great courses for very, very little money, $100, $200, that are skill sets that they're looking for and other people are looking for. As HR people leading the human resource and the executive management team, collect as many of those type of courses that are applicable to your company and then put them on your online university. There are plenty of templates out there that will allow you to plug and play, put your logo in, and so forth. So we went as far as making shirts. We had our own portal. Go to the next slide, please, G. And this kind of will show you what we did, the landing page. So people felt really cool about attending a university, even if they've never gone to a university. But in our company, we had a university. And we also created, which will be a part of the case study, Roger and I said, hey, we love the book Good to Great. There's a seat on the bus for everyone. And if there's not, then get off the bus. But you want to empower and you want to train people with attributes that will help them lead and be a great productive employee. And that allows people to say, I want to stay with this company. And Roger and I were talking last night that we hired people, young people, old people, and now that company has been sold several times for a lot more money than what we started with. And they're still employees from when we hired them in 2006, 2005. And it's really, really a great thing. So don't be afraid to create your own university. I will with every company I'm going to be working with in some fashion, but it's really important. Next slide, please. Woo, this is a big, big thing. Did you ever buy a stock and it goes really, really down? Did you ever invest in something or do something and you're like, oh, that's not cool, or you didn't hold on to it and really encourage it or invest in it further? The cost of hiring the wrong person for the job is really high. The amount of time, energy, money, resources that you put in training and putting an employee on is pretty detrimental. Plus you have a hole. You know, if you have to fire someone, someone leaves because they're not happy. So you want to try to create a good environment. And let's just go to the next slide, because I love the next slide. 50 ways to lose your lover. We have 13 ways to lose your best employee. And this was done by Cindy Boisert at Atman Company. And I put the link in here, and we can provide more information, but some great articles out there. I love the 13 attributes for how you can lose your best asset. You don't have any onboarding strategy. You don't listen to your employees. You divide and conquer within your work teams. You overpower them. You pinpoint the negativity. You don't treat your employees fairly. You don't have a competitive offer. You make them swim against the current, and you lose your best. You micromanage. You know, how many of you have ever worked for micromanagers? You have no recognition towards them whatsoever. You won't let them grow. You're just simply a horrendous leader, and you don't ask for feedback, and you don't have fun. And you got to have fun. You have to be positive, especially as a CEO or an executive team or HR. You have to be firm but fair, but positive. The hardest firing I've ever had to do in my career was my head of human resources, the VP of HR. But that person became very emotional, and you know, it was basically like having a couch in her office where people sit down and give them their whole, you know, everything going on in their personal life. We have resources now that will help, third-party resources, help employees that are going through personal, physical, mental challenges. The HR department, we ended up hiring our legal HR lawyer, which was one of the best things I've ever done. And we created an environment that everyone knew it was safe, and we did not tolerate any type of harassment, negativity, anything like that. And you've got to have that very clear. And you have to ask for feedback. And that's one of the things in the case study that Roger did at Vanderbilt that really, really helped things out. Next slide, please. Diversity adds dimension to your workforce. When I was in my mid-20s, I was asked to go head up an international product development for Siemens Medical in Stockholm, Sweden. There were 2,000 people at the facility, and I had a newborn baby and my wife, and we moved there, and we were the minorities. Even though we're white, even though we spoke English and they spoke some English, I didn't speak very good Swedish. But immediately I got to know what it's like to be a minority in a country where there is a level of discrimination, there's a level of racism in every country. It's just human nature, unfortunately. But you seek out people who are there in an environment that want to help you, and you build up relationships, and you build up credibility, and you're patient. Three things that the Swedish management at Siemens taught me that I'll never forget in international business. Three things, especially for Americans. One was speak slower, speak softer, and most importantly, listen. Don't finish sentences, don't talk loud, speak slower and softer. And it took me 6 months to embrace that. But it helped me internationally in Asia and Europe and the Middle East and South America and so forth. But the diversity, when you bring diversity in, and I'm going to be going into a new work environment where maybe 80% of the employees are Hispanic or minority. I can't wait. I love working with a diverse culture, especially when we eat. I get to try all kinds of different foods. And that's a cool thing about working internationally or working in a diverse environment. You may differ on religion and politics and things like that, but when you sit down to a table with friends and family and colleagues and eat and have beverages, you become one. And so diversity is a true asset that builds human capital. And it helps recruiting as well. If people know that there are other people as diverse in a workforce, they're more willing to come and work for you. If they know that there's one woman and some guy who you know, is from a different country and the rest are old white guys, they may not want to work for your company. And this diversity helps you future-proof because you know you'll grow and expand and bring in lots of input. Next slide. There's biases in hiring in the process, and sometimes this is very unconscious. You know, people that work in HR, people, executive managers who interview. Go to the next slide, please. There are areas that are most susceptible to unconscious bias, and that everything comes in through like recruiting channels, resume reviews, reliance on referrals, and the interview process. And the thing about this is that everyone in their mind has bias. And so if you can utilize tools, platforms, training programs, and resources to eliminate or at least reduce the bias, it will help you. And one of the things that I admired about what G and his team at Spot are doing is they're incorporating artificial intelligence to help both the job seeker and the company looking to hire. And I have been discriminated before. As you grow older, big companies won't hire people that are in their 50s usually, or in their 60s, at least the traditional companies, because at 50s and 60s, you're ready to get pushed out and have fun in Florida playing shuffleboard. But the modern workforce, it doesn't matter how old you are, what skills you have, what color you are, what religion you are. If you can do the job and you have integrity and you have quality, you are a valuable resource. And that's why this is really critical to, as human resource people and companies and executives, you've got to focus on this. Next slide. The world, especially the United States, especially over the past several decades, where we've had to work on eliminating bias of handicap, racial, political, religious, we've tried to encourage diverse type recruiting initiatives. But yet it's at a very young age. And any resource you can get, or any webinars or programs, especially when a lot of people are working virtually, it's really critical to incorporate this into your company. Next slide. All right, this is the fun part, the final part of this great webinar that I wish I could do, teach this every day, because there's a lot more to talk about. Roger Richardson, the good-looking guy in the picture, I've known since the early 90s. He headed up the Tennessee Society of Respiratory Care. I was working on a respiratory home care book. I asked him to join me, and we've been friends ever since, traveled all over the world. And he is a guru at developing human capital, by far the best I've ever known. He's currently working, next slide, please. He's currently working at Vanderbilt in health in Nashville, Tennessee, and he took kind of the basics of what we developed in the Delta Force, the delivering excellence through leadership actions. Delta means change, and in the Greek alphabet, it's all about change. And so we did this at LifeWatch. We used the book Good to Great. We created a program that had training. We offered it to any employee, and then they applied, and then we had a course over 1 year. And we celebrated by going on a trip and so forth. It was really good. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this, and I'm sure Roger, who's on this webinar, would be happy to even do a webinar or talk about it further. But Vanderbilt was founded in 1851. It's a tremendous university. It's like the Harvard of the Mid-South. And they developed a medical center in 1925. And today their enterprise is over 60 hospitals, 5,000 clinicians across 5 states. And it is, when I moved to Tennessee in 1994, my daughter was 1 month old. She ended up in that institution, great healthcare institution, and I was grateful for it. So they take care of neonates through adults. Roger heads up the education for the respiratory staff, which is very large. We can go to the next screen. And this is something that put yourself and your company in this next few slides. Put yourself here, because I guarantee you've dealt with this and how you could deal with what we're going to talk about. This just gives you a geographic area for those that don't live in the United States, where Tennessee is, and Nashville and Vanderbilt. It's a great place to live. I live way up in the north, which is okay in the summer. Next slide, please. Vanderbilt's a great, great institution, great onboarding, really great benefits, everything else. But in 2019, Roger and the executive management team found that there were 3 areas of improvement that were identified. And we'll show you how they identified that. One was a perception of no career advancement opportunities. Only 28% of the staff said there was or were participating in any kind of career advancement. Employment retention rates were less than 50%, big turnover on staff, especially for the lower level. And it was far from their goal of 80%. And the staff morale was really low. The engagement scores by third-party surveys were extremely low. So they had to do something. And this is all pre-COVID, all pre-crazy time. So what they agreed to do was to develop standardized interviewing tools, which there's a lot of slides that he sent me that I couldn't put on here just due to time, and to meet with the staff members individually to ensure that the value and ask for input was there, and re-educated on advancement programs with clarification of standards. So let's go to the next slide. So what they did, like any of you can do in your company, is create either internally or with a third party questions and ranking. So one specific action is that to improve any kind of productivity, clinical care, quality, you get input on questions and you get suggestions, and then you create a survey on an honesty scale that goes to each employee. Things like, you know, do I like my job? Does it pay the bills? Do you like being what you're doing? Are you engaged in advancing yourself? And all the way to the top on the right, which is pretty funny what I see here, is a respiratory practitioner. I'm Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every. Others look to me as an example of excellence. That person's on top of the world, and they're probably drinking highly caffeinated beverages, but that's great. So based on this assessment on an honesty scale, then you can take this input and it helps leadership help the workforce or the individual. Let's go to the next slide, please. And if you want to click on this, G, it kind of advances out, and Roger could take a deeper dive into this of what went on. But every human being pretty much runs on the same processor, meaning that Maslow's hierarchy, the immediate thing is I've got to survive, I've got to have shelter, I've got to have food, I've got to take care of myself. Fear drives everything. You get in your car, you've got fear that someone who's crazy is going to crash into you, but you develop confidence through learning skills not to drive too fast, not to tailgate a car in front of you, and to use your directionals, wear your seatbelt, and all those things. And as you adopt those learning capabilities, you succeed. You make it to your destination. And this was the process that Vanderbilt used, that any company can use, that really takes someone from, I'm fearful I'm going to lose my job. I'm fearful I don't know how to do my job. I'm fearful that the guy next to me is going to yell at me. I will never grow with this company. You know, my kids are sick. I'm afraid to ask for time off. All the way through, now I understand I can learn. I've got programs. I feel good about myself. I can advance, and I'm in a team environment. Next slide, please. Yeah, you got to keep clicking that and click it again, because this is a fun slide that Roger sent me that I liked it quite a bit. The dude pops in and then click in, and basically, what's all this have to do with human capital? The little things on the right that you saw were all the areas that they focused on to help, based on the surveys, programs that they did to help the individual employees build up their skill levels, build up their communication, and they, based on all that input, they did that, and they did a program to advance these respiratory care practitioners, and they had very good participation. So let's go to the next slide, please. The results were really impressive. And when I spoke with Roger, he said, you know, this is pre-COVID. So when COVID hit, they had a well-running machine of motivated employees that were ready to stand up, step in, and take care of one of the worst pandemics we've ever seen in our generation. 60% of the staff members participated, 28% of the staff earned level 2, 32% of the staff reached level 3, which is the highest pay grade. So there was an incentive. If you do this and you want to participate, you will reach higher pay grades. The retention levels went from below 50% to greater than 65% for all those staff hired within a 24 period. But more importantly, the level 2 staff member retention rate went up to 78%, and the level 3, which are the most trained and skilled and the top of all the employees in respiratory care there, measured at 96% retention rate. That is incredible. Employee engagement. Overall, they felt that they were engaged, and that they felt good about the participation, and a third party did this survey. Okay, next slide, please. And this is just a picture he sent me of how these respiratory care practitioners then dove into COVID, and how they really performed well, and they improved their skill sets. And they were truly fighting, and still are fighting, a war. So hats off to you, Roger, and everything you did at Vandy. Okay, I just had my timer, and that means I got to be done. I'd like to thank Roger and everyone else who helped out on this. I did a ton of work, and I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to do more of it, especially for any company that I can help. So at this time, G, I'll turn it back over to you, and you can send your questions on the chat, and G and I can talk about them, and we'd be glad to answer any questions. There's a lot more to talk about, a lot more content behind these slides. If anyone's interested, spot.lk, you can channel it through there, and maybe G, you can tell them how they can find out more. I'm on LinkedIn, happy to connect with you, and thank you again. It was really a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you, Fred. When I started the discussion, I didn't do justice to his background and Roger Richardson's background. They have done an amazing job working at a company in Chicago to take it from a company that is failing into was it 60 million when you left, Fred?
Yeah, we started around 30 million. We went to 60. We got receivables from 90 days to 30. Prepared a NASDAQ IPO. Got the symbol life, and it was recently sold several times for 300 million. And then the company that bought us was sold for over $1 billion. Recently.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So not many companies can do that. So having a good culture, having a good HR department, having good people working for you, not only hiring new people, looking outside of your organization, looking inside your organization to find out the more qualified candidates and pushing them up, hiring them for or improving them internally in the company is a trend that I'm seeing right now. People are realizing bringing somebody from outside is actually going to harm the company than helping the company. So, the people who are in this call, in this meeting, if you see people internally, don't try to go and find people from outside. Try to find people from inside. Train them. Use what Roger has done, use what Fred has done in past companies to train them, because, as you know, hiring and firing and rehiring is very, very expensive.
If you want to turn your camera on, G, I think you're in the dark right now. We'd like to see you if you can.
I am. Sorry. Let me unshare my screen here.
Do we have any questions from the team in Sri Lanka?
I do not have any questions so far. So guys, if you want to, okay, I do have one question. How can a company develop a good company culture? probably where do we start?
That's a great question. You start with the leadership. The surveys that we've done, well, first of all, any company, whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a small company, you're doing it because hopefully you're passionate about it. And people, like in the stock market right now, look at the stocks that are doing well and where people want to invest their money. And those companies, a lot of them are young, entrepreneurial, out ahead. The cybersecurity industry is one great example where anyone from any walk of life, any age, any race, anything, cybersecurity is huge opportunity. But the culture in cybersecurity and software development is very difficult because usually I had software developers in the mid-90s, and back then you keep the lights off, give them Mountain Dew and a lot of snacks and leave them alone. You didn't talk to them. And they were extremely productive. That's changed. In San Diego in 2016, when I went out to head up business development, that was a very high-end onshore software development engineering company with about 100 top-level high-end engineers that were getting $200-300 an hour. And usually they're consultants, and consultants work at their home. But what we did is we offered them benefits and paid them a really good rate and had a place where they could come and work, or they could be at home. And when they came, we had a kitchen that we stocked the refrigerators. We had golf, indoor golf we played. And at lunch, you just come in, make a sandwich, and sit down and talk with each other. And the culture was really, really great because a lot of people in different levels of work, especially software development, they don't want to be bothered. They have to focus on something, and it isn't really a social type environment. So what we did is we created a social environment where it's a very, very important, especially working virtually during the pandemic, that even virtually you can have events, you can have webinars like this, discussions, and a culture starts from the top. If the CEO and the board don't establish a great culture, it'll never work. You might have small pockets, but it has to start at the top. And there's a lot of things we could talk about further on the culture, but it has to be non-political. It has to be non-judgmental. It has to focus on things that are a positive environment. Working at GE worldwide and Siemens worldwide, they all were engaged in projects where we'd have a national sales meeting, but one day or one afternoon, we would go out and do a charitable event together, build houses, clean up things, help unfortunate homeless people or whatever. And that was really cool. I mean, it was really fun, and it really got together. And later that day, we'd all get together and talk about it, and it gave us a great feeling to do something outside of our work that was good for other people. And that's a great cultural thing.
All right. Okay. I do not have any other questions.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour. A two-minute warning. I think maybe G, just maybe a couple last things about the company in Sri Lanka that I believe you want to bring to the United States. Maybe you could take a minute to give us a quick.
Sure, I do have a question, a personal question from me, Fred. You talked about surveys. Roger talked about surveys, right? Which I think is very important. It's not just surveys. We should not do surveys every month or every 3 months. Surveys should be every day, at least as far as I know. So most people are they fear their input is going to put them in a very unfortunate situation or a position in a company, so they don't really participate. How can we let them know that your feedback matters, right, to improve? I see this with the companies that I run currently. People do not want to participate, right? So can you say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In the old days, we had a wooden box with a slot in it, and we called it the anonymous input box. I would create a virtual anonymous input box where people can go in and provide anonymous input or questions that allow them to at least get it off their chest without being targeted for their name and position, and open that up. The third-party surveys, like what Roger showed, are really, really good because you can get a feel. Like when I go into the new company I'm going to be working for in the food industry, where they have data and they have diversity and so forth, I'll get a feel for the chemistry of what people are afraid of, what are they not happy with, and where then you get a kind of a macro level, and then you start working your way down to the individual. And that way it sets the environment stage where people, you know, 2 is more critical than 1, 4 is more critical than 2. And if the company in general is kind of agreeing on 3 or 4 common issues that are parasitic and are toxic to the environment as a whole, that comes down to the individual, that's a great process to start with. The anonymous input box, and make it virtual, and the surveys, so that it's done by a third party. It's like healthcare. We couldn't administrate our healthcare. We had to have a third party do it because of HIPAA. Because, you know, I don't need to know about someone's bunions. I don't care about their backaches. I need to make sure they're productive and they're healthy. And if they do have to go get rehab or something, or have mental issues, we'll support that. We'll help them, because I don't want to lose that employee. But we need to get that input. So that is really a great question, and hopefully I gave you some input.
Thank you, Fred. I think that's all the time we have. Let me introduce Spot platform a little bit and explain to you all how this is going to help, how this is going to address some of the issues that we talked about in this presentation. First of all, Spot is an artificial intelligence powered human capital and a job platform. Our platform helps companies seeking the best talent for employees without any bias. So we talked about bias in this presentation. It's hard to get rid of bias when you have humans involved in the HR or the hiring process. So what we try to do through our platform is to take the bias completely out. We will take bias such as, you know, what's your race? What's your religious affiliation? What's your political affiliations? Are you a female or a male? That doesn't matter in a platform where you're using AI to select the right candidate or connect the right candidate with the right company. So that's what Spot is about. We do not just look at the skills and education. We try to match you with the company culture. Recently, a Gallup poll done last year found that 16% of the employees saying, I'm unhappy with my current organization. Another 14% saying that I want to work in an organization that is more aligned with my values. So that's actually 30% of the people, 30% of the employees saying this. I don't know how this is in Sri Lanka. I have a couple of companies in Sri Lanka. I know some people are happy, some people are not happy. So it all starts with a culture match. If the culture doesn't match with the person's culture or the person's liking, person doesn't like the culture of the company, it end up not working for both parties. And as Fred outlined, it is expensive to hire, fire, and rehire. So that's the main reason we have Spot technologies or the Spot platform. We want continuous feedback, even though we don't have this feature right now with the Spot platform. In the future, we are going to have feedback. We talked about surveys. We want to move away from performance management to career development. Most of the companies, they look at managing performance. We have a lot of managers getting paid a lot of money to manage people. How can we get rid of that? How can we look at what does the employee needs? What are their aspirations? How can we help the employee with their career, their journey in life? So these are all good qualities of companies. If you can look at all these different things, and we sitting on the other side as a technologist who actually can build software, we are like, there are better solutions for this. So this is why we started Spot. Don't take this as a sales pitch. We need help from everybody to be part of this platform. We do feel like that we can take it to the next level. We do feel like that we could use this technology to help companies as well as candidates. So it's sort of a catch-22. People don't come to the platform, or the candidates don't come to the platform when we don't have a lot of companies in there. Companies don't come to the platform when we do not have a lot of candidates in there. So we highly encourage you all to join the platform. Candidates, if you are looking for a better way to find a good company, please register with us. Companies, if you want to find better candidates so you don't go through this process of hiring, training, and firing, join the platform. And if you have any comments, please let us know how to improve the platform. We want this to be a platform where that we all can succeed. With that, I don't see any other. Okay, there's one more question here. So Randy Perera asked, any software or platform suggestions for an anonymous feedback collection? Does Spot Technology provide them? Randy, unfortunately, we do not have right now, but the third version of this platform that we are building will have that capability. The next version that we have on the platform is going to basically profile the company. Profile, I know I should not really use profiling, but a lack of better term, we are taking the company background and we are trying to create a culture profile of the company, what we call Big Nine, and we are trying to match the candidate, the candidate with Big Five and all the other technologies that we build internally to match the candidate with the company. Let me see. Okay, that's all the questions I have. All right, well, any last words, Fred? Well, thanks everybody for joining today, and hopefully we will have some more meaningful webinars like this. Please let us know your comments. If you can actually email us, I think it's info@spot.lk is the email address. Please let us know how you feel about these kind of webinars. Give us suggestion in the future to improve our webinar series so we can not only show you how things are done in the US, but we can specifically address if you have any specific issues in your company as a candidate or as a HR department. Okay. Okay, so somebody said, oh, it's Randy said, it's very informative and most suitable for a country like Sri Lanka to identify potential candidates that lead organizational performance. Yes, I agree with you, Randy. This is why we are creating this platform. From Fred, when will Spot be in USA and Europe, etc.? So very good question, Fred. Right now we are concentrating on Sri Lanka because of we do not have all the technologies built into this platform as a human capital platform. Even though our aspiration is this to be a full-blown human capital platform, we don't have all the pieces. So we cannot market this in Europe or in USA as a human capital platform when we don't have all the pieces in there. So I'm thinking probably with maybe another 3 to 4 months to bring this to Europe and also to the US.
Thanks, Jeep.
You're welcome. All right. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great morning. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.